Hey there, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the dialectic of freedom and more specifically, the concept of freedom as it pertains to the Black experience. So again, this comes from a lot of the things that Maxine Green talked about, different aspects of different types of freedoms. And she talked about in her book, Dialectic of Freedom, that there is two types of freedoms as it pertains to the Black experience. Situational freedom, which leads to a degree of expressiveness, and she also talks about this idea of negative freedom and what that means in relation to the Black experience. And so I kind of want to go a little bit into just kind of an introduction for now as to what the dialectic of freedom is and how it pertains to the Black experience. The dialectic of freedom, there is ultimately, again, there's ultimately four different types of freedom, okay? So we have situational freedom, political freedom, artistic freedom, and negative freedom. Again, we still see within this mandala, we have as above, so below, as within, so without. Whenever we see the quaternity of something like that, it represents wholeness because four is the number of wholeness. Again, as above, so below, as within, so without. It creates this cyclical nature of how freedom is experienced. In today's video, I really wanted to pinpoint how in the Black experience, especially as it pertains to Black America, how not only do Black people experience freedom differently, how reality is a socio-historic process that we move through different stages of freedom over time. To just give you an example of how we move through the different stages of political freedom, and then I'll give you an example of how freedom is then experienced individually and differently by different types of Black people. So first, if we think about reality as a socio-historic process, we could ultimately say that for political freedom, the first person that comes to mind for me is Martin Luther King and what he fought for and what he believed to be true during, the civil rights era, the civil rights movement, and Jim Crow and segregation in the 1960s. Then, shortly after that, we then have hip hop. Hip hop emerged as a form of artistic expression, and it emerged as a form of negative freedom as being sort of rebellious. Situational freedom within the context of situational freedom then was being from the inner city, being from the lower strata of society in America, and ultimately still saying, you know what, we have a reason to be. We have a reason to create music. We're going to be anti-establishment and go against the norm and create different ways of being, which ultimately then created a new mode of freedom, an understanding of situational freedom as it pertains to being situated outside the white experience. So we have political, artistic, negative, and situational freedom. That's how it kind of flows throughout, Black history. This also happens within, on a smaller scale, within, different political movements. So you would say the Black Panther movement was a form of political freedom. It was artistic to create, an identity, the imagery of the Black Panther movement, with the afros, with the fist up. It was negative in the sense that it was rebellious for that historical time period, and a degree of situational freedom for an expressivism of the different ways of Black identity and how we understand it within Black America. So as above, so below, as within, so without. Today, in today's historical context, freedom today, because Black America is more amalgamated than it has ever been before, what we're noticing now is that Black people are experiencing freedom differently, especially because during the hip hop era, this is where it connects to capitalism. hip hop has gone off and they've made and amassed a lot of wealth. And so a lot of them exist in the realm of material security. There's also categories of black people who exist beneath the prosperity of hip hop and don't have any money. They exist in the realm of necessity. Artistically, rappers have, the capacity to create artistic freedom and things like that. And you could say that a black person who grows up in the suburbs has a degree of situational freedom, right? Because they kind of exist outside the realm of cultural intelligibility that is for the rappers. So you then also have groups of black people who are Moreno Hispanos, who grew up Hispanohablantes. That is a different type of blackness. That is a different type of freedom that you can use to then ultimately express your blackness. You also have different groups that I've been seeing, like, that are more regionally specific, like the Solans and the Solanis. That is another form of situational freedom and how it, correlates to the black experience today. And so you see that different types of people experience freedom differently, and express it differently throughout history and even within the same historical context.